The line between good and evil doesn't separate us from them. It runs through every human heart, including yours, including mine. Sounds dramatic, right? But that's not poetry, that's psychology. See, we all like to think we'd never do something cruel, never follow orders blindly, never stay silent while something terrible happens. But what if that confidence, the belief that we're the good ones, is exactly what makes us vulnerable? In one of the most disturbing psychology studies ever done, a group of regular college students turned sadistic in less than a week. No monsters, no maniacs, just average guys with name tags and sunglasses. And it gets worse. This isn't some fluke. It happens in labs, in history, in real life, again and again. The book that explains all this? The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo. And once you understand what he uncovered, you'll never see people or yourself the same way again. This video breaks down the 10 most powerful lessons from that book. Some will shock you, some will challenge you, and one of them might just save you from becoming someone you swore you'd never be. Seriously, stick around. This might change how you see yourself. We've all got this comforting little myth baked into our brains. Evil people do evil things, like there's this imaginary line in the sand, right? And on one side, there's us, the good guys, and on the other, them, the psychos, criminals, tyrants, the ones you watch documentaries about and think, thank God I'm nothing like that. But here's the twist. That line, it's not out there somewhere. It's way closer, way blurrier, maybe even running straight through the middle of every one of us. Let me explain. Back in the 1970s, Dr. Philip Zimbardo ran one of the most infamous psychology experiments of all time. You've probably heard about it in passing, the Stanford Prison Experiment. But let's actually stop and feel what happened. Zimbardo brought in a bunch of everyday college students, not dropouts or delinquents, smart, well-adjusted kids. He randomly split them into two groups, guards and prisoners. The whole thing was staged, set up in the basement of Stanford's psych building. It was supposed to run for 2 weeks. What happened next was honestly messed up. Within hours, the guards started flexing, not just giving orders, but stripping people of their dignity. Sunglasses to hide their eyes, barked commands, forced push-ups, cruel nicknames. And the prisoners, they went from joking around to breaking down, crying, shutting down, begging to leave. It stopped feeling like an experiment and started feeling real. The whole thing spun so far out of control they had to shut it down after just 6 days. 6 days. So here's the million-dollar question. What the hell happened? Zimbardo's answer still haunts psychology classrooms. And honestly, it should haunt all of us a little. The people didn't change. The situation did. And that situation had enough force, enough psychological gravity to override basic morality. It didn't matter how good someone was on the outside. Once the rules shifted, once the system rewarded power and punished empathy, their behavior changed fast. This is what Zimbardo called situational power, the invisible hand that nudges people over the edge, not because they're evil, but because the setup makes it easy. Now pause with that for a sec. If your actions can be shaped that drastically by your environment, then how much of your true self is really just a reflection of your surroundings? We all want to believe we're the kind of person who would speak up, who'd push back, who'd walk away. But history and studies like this keep whispering, don't be so sure. It's easy to judge from the outside. It's easy to say, I'd never do that. But when you're inside the system, when you've got a uniform on, or a label slapped on your back, or a boss breathing down your neck, that's when the real test starts. And most of us, we don't even realize we're being tested. Zimbardo himself admitted he got caught up in it. He played the prison superintendent in the experiment and didn't stop it soon enough. He watched it unravel, knew it was wrong, and still he hesitated. Even he wasn't immune. The lesson here isn't just about a messed up experiment. It's about everyday life, about how people in prisons, schools, offices, even group chats can end up doing things they'd swear they'd never do because when the structure is toxic and the roles are rigid and the pressure is subtle but relentless, good intentions don't stand a chance. Here's something wild. Psychologists call it the fundamental attribution error. It's our tendency to blame someone's behavior on their personality instead of the context they're in. We say, he's just a jerk, instead of asking, what kind of environment made him act that way? And look, this doesn't mean we're off the hook. It doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it does mean we need to understand it better if we ever want to stop it. Because here's the truth, what happened in that fake prison basement isn't fiction, it's a mirror. And if you've ever stayed silent when something felt wrong, or followed a rule you knew didn't make sense, or watched someone get treated unfairly and didn't step in, then yeah, maybe you've felt the pull of situational power too. It creeps in quietly. No dramatic music, no villain laugh, just a new rule, a subtle reward, a little bit of peer pressure, a small decision you barely even notice until you're miles away from the person you thought you were. So instead of asking, what kind of person does something evil, maybe we should start asking what kind of setup makes evil look normal, and maybe, just maybe, where the real danger lives. Lesson 1. The invisible power of situations. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever gone along with something not because you believed in it, but because everyone else was doing it? It's weird how quickly we adapt, right? You blink and suddenly you're doing something you'd normally side-eye, all because the setting made it feel okay. That's exactly what Philip Zimbardo wanted to expose. He called it situational power. This invisible pressure cooker that can make regular people act in ways they never imagined. In the Stanford Prison Experiment, the setup was simple. College students, random roles, half guards, half prisoners. What happened? Within days, the guards got cruel, fast. They weren't evil, they were just reacting to a situation that rewarded control and punished compassion. That's the disturbing part. It wasn't about personality, it was about context. Same thing happened in the Milgram experiment. Regular people delivered what they thought were lethal shocks to strangers, just because a man in a lab coat told them to. 65% went all the way. Zimbardo's point? Most of us aren't as bulletproof as we think. The right environment, the right pressure, and snap, your sense of right starts to bend. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, a comment you let slide, a decision you don't question. That's the true danger of situational power. It feels normal while it's happening, and if you're not watching for it, you'll never realize you changed. Lesson 2. The banality of evil. We like to think evil has a face, a twisted villain, a maniacal laugh, a red flag waving in the background, something obvious, so we can spot it, label it, and feel safe knowing it's nothing like us. But here's the cold truth Zimbardo hits us with. Evil often looks ordinary. It doesn't storm into the room screaming. It walks in quietly, smiling, wearing a uniform, filling out paperwork, going with the flow. That's what Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. She saw it during the trial of Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi officer who organized the logistics of the Holocaust. He wasn't a monster frothing at the mouth. He was average, awkward even, just a guy who said, "I was following orders." Zimbardo took that idea and ran with it in the Lucifer effect, because what he saw in the Stanford Prison Experiment echoed the same thing. Those college kids, the guards, weren't psychopaths. They were normal, but the role gave them permission to act otherwise, and that's what's so unsettling. Evil isn't always loud or hateful. Sometimes it's routine, a process, a checklist, a shrug. And once you believe you're just doing your job, it becomes dangerously easy to separate yourself from the consequences. Zimbardo's not saying we're doomed, but he is saying we're all capable if the system, the setting, and the silence around us say it's fine. So maybe the scariest evil is the kind that hides in plain sight. Lesson 3. Psychological mechanisms of evil. So, how does a regular person go from, "I'd never do that," to, "Well, I didn't really have a choice"? Let me explain. Zimbardo lays out this mental toolkit people use without even realizing it to slowly step away from their own values. It's not like people suddenly wake up evil. It's more like they quietly make peace with doing the wrong thing. One of the biggest ones, rationalization. You start telling yourself stories to make your actions feel okay. Everyone else is doing it. It's not that bad. I'm just doing my job. Sound familiar? Then there's de-individuation. Basically, when you stop seeing yourself as you, you're just part of the group now. You're the guard, the employee, the member. No name, no personal accountability, just a role to play. And the ugliest one? Dehumanization. That's when you stop seeing others as fully human. You give them labels: enemy, criminal, outsider. Once you do that, empathy shuts down, and once empathy's gone, almost anything becomes justifiable. These mental shortcuts let people sleep at night after doing things they once said they'd never do. And it happens fast. That's the scary part. One step, one excuse, one moment of silence, and suddenly, you're part of something dark without even realizing how you got there. Zimbardo's message? You have to catch these patterns before they catch you. Lesson 4. The Illusion of Invulnerability. You ever watch something awful go down and think, that would never be me? Yeah, that thought? It's comforting, and also one of the most dangerous lies we tell ourselves. Zimbardo calls it the illusion of personal invulnerability, the belief that we're somehow immune to outside influence, that we'd always do the right thing, even under pressure. But here's the thing, that belief doesn't protect you, it blinds you. It keeps you from asking the hard questions like, would I actually speak up if everyone else was silent? Or would I still do the right thing if it cost me something? We love to think we're exceptions, special, smarter, more grounded, but statistically, we're not. The same social forces that shaped those college students in the Stanford Prison Experiment shape us too. Different setting, same brain, and when you believe you're untouchable, you stop being careful. You miss the early red flags. You don't notice the small compromises creeping in. Honestly, the people who are most vulnerable to manipulation are often the ones who think they're not. So if you want to stay in control of your choices, drop the ego, be aware, stay humble. That's the real defense. Lesson 5. The Evil of Inaction. We talk a lot about the people who do evil, but what about the ones who stand by and say nothing? Philosophically, that's a harder pill to swallow, because it means that being a good person isn't just about not doing harm. It's about refusing to let harm happen around you. Zimbardo calls this the evil of inaction, the sin of omission. It's the quiet, passive kind of wrongdoing. No yelling, no weapons, just silence. In the Stanford Prison Experiment, he saw it in himself. He wasn't one of the guards, but he watched it unfold, heard the cries, saw the fear, and waited days before stepping in. Why? Because he'd slipped into the role of prison superintendent and forgot his role as a scientist, a human being. The lesson: evil doesn't always need active cruelty. Sometimes, all it takes is people choosing not to act, choosing comfort over courage. And honestly, that hits close to home. Because most of us won't be villains in our lifetime, but we will be bystanders. So ask yourself, when something's wrong, will you stay quiet, or will you do the harder thing and step in? Lesson 6. Authority and peer pressure. Let's be real. Standing your ground is easy when you're alone, but when you're in a room full of people nodding along or someone in charge is telling you what to do, that's when things get messy. Zimbardo highlights this tension with one of psychology's most famous studies, Milgram's obedience experiment. The setup? A regular person is told to shock a stranger every time they get an answer wrong. The shocks aren't real, but the subject doesn't know that. And still, 65% of participants went all the way to what they believed was a lethal voltage. Why? Because the authority figure, calm, scientific, wearing a lab coat, told them to, and that was enough. This isn't ancient history. It's the same force that drives war crimes, toxic workplace cultures, school bullying, people doing awful things, not out of hate, but out of obedience or fear of not fitting in. Philosophers call this the tension between individual conscience and collective conformity. And most people, they fold. The trick isn't just knowing what's right. It's having the guts to hold your line when everyone else looks away. Lesson 7. When roles rewrite who we are. Here's something that doesn't get said enough. Who you are isn't always what shows up when the pressure's on. Like, think about being at work. You might be kind, honest, and thoughtful, but when you're handed a role, especially one with power or rules attached to it, it does something weird to your head. Suddenly, you're not acting like you anymore. You're acting like the manager or the enforcer or whatever label you've been given. Zimbardo saw this firsthand in the Stanford Prison Experiment. Nobody told the guards to be cruel. There was no manual, but they stepped into the role, and the role took over. Their behavior shifted, Not because their core values disappeared, but because the identity they were given became louder than the one they walked in with. And that's the point. Roles don't just guide behavior, they can override character, especially when no one's questioning the role itself. So if you're in a role with influence, ask yourself, is this really me, or just the part I'm playing? Lesson 8. The Banality of Heroism. Okay, time for a plot twist. If ordinary people can do terrible things, then maybe ordinary people can do extraordinary good, too. Zimbardo didn't just study evil to scare us. He also wanted to prove something way more hopeful. Heroism isn't reserved for Marvel characters or people with capes. It's often small, quiet, and inconvenient, and it lives in all of us. He called it the banality of heroism. Same setup, flipped outcome. Just like someone can slowly slide into cruelty, someone can choose, in a tough moment, to act with courage. Speak up, step in, risk something to help someone else. And yeah, it's not flashy. No awards, no theme music, but that's kind of the point. Real heroism often looks like one person refusing to stay silent while everyone else does. You won't always get a second chance to be brave, so when the moment shows up, grab it. Lesson 9. Resistance is possible. Alright, so now you're probably thinking, if situations are that powerful, are we all just doomed to go along with them? Not even close. Zimbardo didn't leave us hanging. He showed that resistance is real and it's possible. But here's the catch. It's not about being born brave. It's about learning to spot what's happening before you get swept up. There's this thing called the reverse Milgram experiment, where people are placed in a position to resist an unjust authority. And guess what? When they're aware of the pressure, they're way more likely to push back. It's like building a muscle, awareness, courage, repetition. And yeah, ethical leadership matters too. One good voice in a group can shift everything. That means you can be that voice. You're not powerless, you're just in training. So stay alert, ask questions, and don't be afraid to be the one who says, nope, not doing that. Lesson 10. Redemption and Responsibility. Let's be real, none of us get it right all the time. We mess up, we stay quiet, we take the easy route when we should have stood up. But here's what Zimbardo reminds us. We're not trapped by our worst moments. Redemption isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about facing it, owning it, and choosing differently next time. He even owned his own failure in the Stanford Prison Experiment. He didn't stop it soon enough, but instead of hiding from that, he turned it into a lesson for the world. So yeah, you might mess up, but you're not stuck. You can still be the person who sees, who speaks, who leads. Responsibility is power. Use it. Here's the hardest truth in all of this. Evil isn't some distant thing, hiding in shadows or history books. It's in us, in the choices we make when no one's watching, in the silence we keep when it's easier to blend in, in the moments we hand off responsibility because it's more comfortable that way. And that doesn't make us bad people, it makes us people. But here's the shift. If we're capable of darkness, then we're also capable of light, of stepping up, of making the hard call when it counts. The line between good and evil? It's not between us and them. It's right here, in every human heart. So, when it's your moment, who are you gonna be? Alright, so here's the real takeaway. The Lucifer effect isn't just about evil out there. It's about how easy it is to lose yourself in the wrong role, the wrong crowd, the wrong moment. But it also means this: you're not stuck. Every moment is a chance to choose, to notice what's happening, to resist the pressure, and to act with intention. Because who we are isn't fixed. It's shaped by what we do when it actually matters. And if that's true, then maybe the bigger question is, are we wired for good, or is darkness just baked into our nature?